Okay, so here is my list. I got this page. I will put a link. I have my own website, michaelolpin.com, and I'll give you this link in the Canvas area so you can check it out. But I want to go through this. Uh, this is my list about why we should be exercising. And why it's such an important power tool. And let me just show you really quickly. If you scroll down through this, we're going to go through this not too in depth, but this is just a gigantic list of over 100 things, and here's the references for a lot of them. 100 plus different things that aerobic exercise does for us. Now, to start off, if we were to ask ourselves, what is the number one cause of death in this country? We all know it's heart disease. The statistic is 1 in 2 people will at some point in their life have some type of heart condition, cardiovascular problem. And so I'm thinking, well, how much does exercise, and again, we're just talking about the aerobic kind. We're not even playing with those other great kinds, but the aerobic kind. How much of a benefit is it for our heart and heart disease and cardiovascular problems? And so these are just a few of the benefits. And like I said, we're not going to go through these all individually, but I just want you to get a sense of what happens when we exercise aerobically. So we know that it increases the diameter of blood vessels, which means that the blood has more room to flow through the blood vessels if you've got any kind of atherosclerosis, in other words, clogging of the arteries. Exercise tends to open those up, which makes it so that, I mean, that all by itself is huge. Not too many other things we know of in our human condition can do that to blood vessels. Increased cardiac output, decreased resting heart rate. Most people have pretty high heart rates, which just means their heart is working harder than it should. Increase in the size of the heart, increased stroke volume, decrease in blood pressure. We know there's other ways to manage blood pressure, but exercise helps. Increase in number of red blood cells, which means we're able to use more oxygen, get more oxygen in and use it. Expand the blood plasma volume, increases the strength of cardiac tissue, can increase total blood volume, so we have more blood. All of these things are just amazingly powerful for helping the heart and the cardiovascular system work better. And the evidence seemed to show that it can decrease overall risk of heart disease probably more than any other single factor. Now, some of the other power tools that we'll be talking about are supportive of this, but exercise seems to be the best thing. So we know that. So what about the rest of the body? What about other aspects of the body? So helps the liver, which I think is the most important organ. I don't know if there's a most important organ, but the liver really does more things for us than any other organ. So exercise helps the liver. It increases HDL, which we know is the good cholesterol. It also decreases LDL. Now, cholesterol is not quite as important as it used to be as far as what we think about heart disease, but still, there's plenty of people who are saying, yeah, we still need to keep an eye on this. So exercise is one of the few things we know of that can decrease LDL and VLDL cholesterol. It also plays with insulin, helps us balance our insulin, our blood sugar levels. And we're going to talk about this more in our next class about diabetes. And so I don't want to spend too much time there, but this is one of those things that if you're diabetic, you should be exercising. Just, I mean, really quick story. My dad's brother, my uncle, when he was 19, he was diagnosed with diabetes. And the doctor said, you got about a year to live. You don't have much time because it's pretty pernicious type of diabetes you have. It was type 1 diabetes, but it came on while he was an adult, which is a little bit unusual. Anyway, so he's told, you don't have much time to live. So enjoy it. Try to do what you can. And he lived up in the Portland area, and he had a job that required him to ride his bike to work. Or it not required him, but he loved riding his bike, so he started riding his bike to work and back every day. He rode it up and back every day. And he went back to the doctor something like 5 years later, and the doctor said, wow, you've been doing something right, because one, you're not dead, and two, your diabetes seems to be under control. It's not gone, but it's under control. And he said, what have you been doing? He says, well, I don't know. I've just been living my life. And they back then, this was a long time ago, they didn't really put two and two together with exercise and diabetes. And so but he said, they determined that bike riding was the thing that was keeping him healthy. And so he just kept doing that. He ended up living, I believe he was in his 60s before the diabetes finally got the best of him. But he lived a long and wonderful life that had he not, as far as he said to my dad, this is what made the difference for me. They didn't know a lot about the sugar thing and cutting that, but they did know, or he exercised. So, good stuff. We tend to use fat as an energy source during physical exercise when it's aerobic. That's cool. So it helps with fat, and it can decrease the percentage of body fat. Reduces the level of abdominal obesity. So what's abdominal obesity? It's pretty interesting. The studies seem to show that people who have more fat in their tummy have more heart problems than people who have greater accumulations of fat elsewhere on their body. It appears that having a pot gut or pot belly is pretty dangerous. I don't know if it's just because it's so close to the heart or why, but exercise can positively affect that. Going through some of the more scientific-y things, increases breathing, respiratory rate. All of these things are really powerful for us, aids in digestion of food. Now, here's an interesting thing. So, we know that heart disease, 1 in 2 people will get it. Our second on the list of top 10 killers or chronic diseases from which people die, the number 2 is cancer. It's always been cancer. Diabetes is slowly creeping up. Stroke and cancer are but cancer, the ratio is 1 in 3 people will have cancer during their lifetime. Now, it was really interesting. The study that I saw showed that athletes, the ratio is 1 in 7. So 1 out of every 3 people for non-athletes will get some type of cancer. For athletes, it's 1 in 7. What are athletes doing? They're moving. Now they found there's a lot of other cancers that are protected from. Is that the right way to say it? When we exercise. So colon cancer, breast cancer, um, prostate, uterus, ovary, cervix, vaginal cancers. Exercise seems to help with those, help prevent those. Increases efficiency of thyroid gland as you get older, especially women. That's a big deal. I know many people whose thyroids have just aren't there anymore. They're not working at all, and they have to take steroids or thyroid medication. And exercise seems to help with that. Endometriosis regulates heat, decreases appetite. That's something that's nice. I mean, just keep on going down. Now, musculoskeletal strengthens the joints, the ligaments, tendons, skeletal muscles, overall strength, overall endurance, flexibility, body posture. All of these things are really important that seem to, as we get older, a lot of us in this class aren't very old yet, but some of us are, and we get older and we see these things kind of starting to waste away. I have many friends. I'm getting older, and a lot of my friends, I'm seeing this happen in them where they don't have strength, they don't have endurance, they don't have, they get injured more easily, and it takes them forever to heal because they've just stopped moving. Now, another area that I think is really fascinating has to do with mental function. And we can go through this. It seems, and I was listening to a podcast just the other day where a guy was mentioning about Alzheimer's, and he said, really, one of the most important things you can do to prevent Alzheimer's when you're old is exercise. Not to excess, but exercise when you're young. Something happens in the brain when you exercise. I was reading another study, maybe I'll pull it up in a second, that kind of focused on that as well. Good for creativity. Decreases strains associated with psychic stress. And we'll get into stress in a little while. Not today, but we're going to play with it some. But one thing that I know for sure, and I play a lot in the stress world, as probably that's kind of my main area. And I've done the most work in stress. And one of the things that is really obvious to me is when somebody exercises, they go through that same process as the fight or flight response, only they come out of it when they're done exercising. And when they come out of it, that means they're relaxed. They're no longer in fight or flight. And like I said, we'll get into that and play with it some, but hugely, hugely important for stress. May help for migraines. Depression. I wanted to say one quick word about depression. We don't play with problems too much in this class, but we know a lot of people who are depressed. We know a lot of people who are suicidal. And there's been just tons of research, monster amounts of research that shows that when you exercise, if you're taking medication, so here's what the research looks like. They've had people who, in a study, for example, they'd have this group that's taking the medication, this group that is exercising aerobically, and this group that's doing both of those things, and then another group that's a control group. And so they kind of compare the drugs group, the exercise group, the both group, and the control group. You with me? Does that make sense? And then they would compare to see which ones of those fared the best for depression. And what they found is that exercise all by itself is as effective as depression medication. And put those two together and it's kind of synergistic. It's more effective till you can work your way off of the medication compared to the control group. So, and that's, we keep seeing that over and over and over and over and over. I remember I had a professor at BYU when I was working on my psychology degree. He was a psychiatrist there in Provo, and he had a lot of patients and who were depressed. And the very first thing he told us, the very first thing that he told his patients when they came to see him with depression is he said, okay, for the next 3 weeks, I want you to exercise every single day for, 30 minutes, 30 to 45 minutes. And he said he lost half of his patients. Now, it's possible he didn't know the answer to this, possible they went to somebody else, or they just they wanted somebody who was going to give them drugs. But he said it was amazing how much better people got with the depression just by including exercise in their daily activities. One study I saw says it may cure grumpiness. Isn't that cool? May cure grumpiness. Good for the brains. Helps with aging. Let's see. Good for another one that can think better. It increases longevity. People live longer. Now, here's what I've learned is, on the average, people live, if you were to take a person and from birth to death, he's probably going to live about 75 years. That's the average age of death right now-ish. I mean, depending on the study you see. But the interesting thing about that is 12, right now, 12 of those years on average are disabled years. In other words, that a person during 12 years of his or her life cannot function normally because of either a chronic disease, an accident where they're debilitated, or some other problem, but mostly chronic disease. What we're learning here, what I really want to impress upon your minds is that if you do these things, the research seems to show that if you do these things that we're talking about here in the beginning of the semester, that these 12 years of debilitated life can be reduced to 1 year of can't function normally. That's cool. That's really cool. And so we want to get these ducks lined up so that we can make a huge change for ourselves. So bonus benefits, in other words, besides the physiology, besides the mental, what else does exercise do for us? And this is kind of just a hodgepodge of other things. So good for athletic performance, develops motor skills, increases the number of good years lived dramatically. So that's what I was talking about before. Feel younger than your biological age at any age. So you don't age as quickly. Great for the immune system, balance, coordination. As hard as this is for people, it's great for fibromyalgia. And we'll get into that in just on another day. Makes you look better. It absolutely improves your sleep. You get more rest with less sleep. You get deeper levels of sleep. You get more REM sleep, which we'll talk about. Get to sleep more quickly. Enhances sexual desire. It's just kind of a bonus. May reduce risk of pregnancy complications. My wife was, with all of our kids, was up until the last 2 or 3 weeks of every one of her pregnancies she was exercising. Now, certainly not as hard as she did when she's not pregnant, but and all 4 of her pregnancies went really pretty smoothly. Not, I don't know how you can have a smooth pregnancy, but she claims that it really, really helped her. And the bonus one, usually get out of the house and meet very nice people, because people who exercise are usually very happy and very nice people. So that's a long list. And I've got lists for most things that we can do that help us with our health and well-being. I don't have one that's this long. So again, and I'll make the link to that in the show notes, in the Canvas notes, where you can access this page. It's pretty cool. So go. Now the next thing we want to do is answer the question, what is the best exercise and how should we do it? There's one answer to the first question and 1,000 answers to the second. So stay tuned.